Kirara is actually quite surprising compared to other Dendro characters, and in this video, I'm going to give Kirara an honest showcase, reveal to you some unique things about her, and most importantly, I'll show you some really good teams you can build with her. I'm not sure if you're like me, but I'm getting a little exhausted from all the new Dendro characters getting released. Still, Kirara actually brings quite a few good things to the table, and I think after I show you her build and showcase, you'll understand why. So, first of all, my Kirara is level 90, Constellation 0, and her talents are raised to level 9. She's also equipped with Noblesse 4 set. You could definitely go with Deepwood or Instructor set as well, which I will showcase later in the video, but for her personal damage and performance, we'll be looking at Noblesse for now. Finally, she's using Sapwood Blade as her best general free-to-play option, but you could also go for other sorts, which I'll showcase later on. So, let's start with the shield. By tapping the skill button, a Dendro shield will be created, and it will be able to absorb around 9,266 damage or so, since she has around 43k health. Now, compared to other HP scaling shielders in the game, if they had the same amount of health, she actually ends up at the bottom of the list, as you can see here. But here's the catch. She does have a passive talent that further boosts it. To put it simply, when she goes into her cat box mode by holding down the skill, each time she hits an enemy, she obtains reinforced packaging stack, which can be done up to 3 times. What this means is that after the skill ends, for each of those stacks, she will create a mini version of the shield, which has 20% damage absorption of the original. So if 3 stacks obtained, which if I understand correctly, it can be done really fast, just bump into an enemy 3 times. This means she can get a combined shield of 60% absorption rate. And keep in mind, these reinforced packaging shields can combine with each other and with the original shield. So where does that leave us in the shield ranking? Well, Kirara actually jumps up higher in the list, and now she can absorb up to 14,829 damage, compared to others when scaling with the same amount of HP my build is using. And let's not forget, this is a Dendro shield. It gets 250% efficiency against Dendro attacks, which includes the Dendro core explosion damage, and rockets her all the way to the top as the best shielder against Dendro attacks, which is no surprise. But it's nice to see 37,000 damage absorption against Dendro. But how good is her personal damage? Well, most of her damage comes from the burst, and it actually has a really nice multiplier, so if I use it with this build, it deals around 16,000 damage and also leaves some bombs that each deal 1010 damage. Tapping the skill dishes out 2,600 damage, and holding down the skill, each time she bumps with her cat box mode, she delivers a whopping 753 damage. And when the skill ends, it delivers roughly 3,200 damage. So if you do her full rotation, you will end up with 73,500 damage over 12 seconds. And I don't need to tell you this, but it's really bad. And that's me assuming all of these hits are critical, which is naive, since her crit rate is so low with an HP build. And even if she deals Quicken damage and receives buffs, it's still not good enough. But what if we could build her as a DPS instead? Well, by using a Jade Cutter with Gilded Dreams 4 set, we can start to see some nice numbers pop off, like Burst hitting for 45,000 damage, other spread reactions coming from skill and bombs ranging from 12,500 to almost 18,000. Overall, if she again does her full rotation of Burst and holding down the skill button in a cat box mode until the duration is over, she actually achieves 225,000 damage, which is pretty impressive for a 4-star. But the thing is, it's not realistic to expect her to have Gilded Dreams and somebody else applying Deepwood debuff, since other Dendro teammates she would end up with, like Alhaitham, would be the one who's utilizing Deepwood from her. And also, if you play her in a quick swap team, then the rotation changes. Now she only has time to do Burst and holding down the skill, doing like 3 hits and then switching out, so that a max efficiency shield is created and somebody else can do their damage afterwards. And for such a rotation, her damage would be around 113,000 with a DPS build and 41,000 with HP build. You can see that her biggest damage contribution comes from the burst, which is actually great since the quick swap rotation only takes a few seconds. But keep in mind, if you do decide to build her as a DPS support, you can expect around 50% weaker shields, which is not ideal and kinda drifts away from her primary role. And that's me using Jade Cutter, so the shields would become weaker even more with a different sword. Overall, you can see that Kirara is actually a pretty good shielder. It does require her to quickly go into hold mode and bump into enemy 3 times to get that maximum absorption shield, but what I do like about it is that even if the original shield breaks, once her skill is over, now the new one still gets generated, which will range from 20% to 60% of the original shield absorption, depending on how many stacks you obtained. And yeah, she can also deal damage, but as I said, you will be sacrificing the chunkiness of the shield, and in my opinion, you're better off building her with full HP stats instead. But there are some exceptions, so let's take a look at teams showcase next. Just like with every other showcase, keep an eye on the bottom of the screen to see the stats Kirara has. Now, for the first team, which is Quicken Quick Swap, my Kirara is fully built with HP from the main stats, and I focused on getting some energy recharge from substats, because while her burst cost is 60, she does need around 125% ER for a smooth burst activation off cooldown. It does help a lot that Kazuha is in the team and the double electro resonance is working, so this definitely cuts down on ER requirements. But yeah, this team actually performs really well. It's nice to see Kazuha can pull in Kirara's bombs, which means more Dendro application, and since this is a quick swap team, as I mentioned previously, Kirara can do a short hold skill into burst, ending up with 4 particles she can catch. 1 particle gets generated every 4 seconds from her catbox mode, and 3 when it ends. You can also get 3 particles by just tapping the skill, but it's really more efficient to just do the short hold for the extra particle and a bit more Dendro application. And the Noblesse Forset buff really helps the team here, but I also try to deep with set with DPS Kirara, and while it does improve her personal performance, she still doesn't bring in as much damage as the rest of the team, so I just went back to her shield build instead. Oh, and if you're wondering, the second passive that improves her damage for every 1000 health she has is barely noticeable. It may as well not exist, since it doesn't provide a good damage boost. Now, another team that I really liked was Nilobloom. Here, Kirara is using Instructor Set HP build with Iron Sting, so if she triggers some of those blooms, they can hit for more damage. While I really like Instructor Set in Nilobloom teams, you will feel the difference in lack of stats that you could otherwise get from a 5-star artifact. Sure, Kirara has almost 36,000 health here, but reaching around 50k would be nicer, especially since it's not just Dendro explosions the shield will need to absorb efficiently, but also enemy attacks. Still, I actually like this free-to-play team a lot, which includes Dendro Traveler and Barbara. What's cool about Barbara is that her Water Ring works super well with Kirara's catbox mode when she moves around and inflicts Dendro damage plus Hydro, resulting in strong synergy. And in a premium team, she also works great. With Kokomi and Nahida, the damage and consistency is even better, and it even makes up for the weaker shield you will get from the Instructor Set, thanks to Kokomi's healing, which, vice versa, is also worse because Kokomi is built with full elemental mastery in mind. So combine average healing and shielding, and you get a nice combo of survivability in Nilobloom teams. Finally, for Burgeon and Hyperbloom teams, I didn't really find them to be that good for the Abyss, because when it comes to Burgeon, you really need a specific Dendro application. And the problem with Kirara is that she needs to stay on field in her catbox mode, so she can keep applying Dendro, which means Toma's burst cannot trigger without normal attacks. And as for Hyperbloom, it's the same problem. The best Hyperbloom teams currently utilizing Xingqiu and Yelan will not work well with Kirara, since again, you cannot trigger their bursts when she's moving around. Although, if we go back to an older iteration of Hyperbloom, a team like Ayato, Cookie, and another flexible unit can make Hyperbloom work with Kirara, since Ayato's burst can apply Hydro off-field, so you can run around with Kirara, apply some Dendro, and use her burst afterwards, and then swap out to Ayato, do some raw damage, and go back to Cookie to reapply the skill. You could also use Kokomi or Barbara for that off-field Hydro application, but honestly, the two best teams you can go with this cat-like courier would be Quicken and Nilobloom. The synergy is way more better with these teams, and you don't have to work around some of the huge drawbacks that you get when using Kirara in Hyperbloom or Burgeon. Now, I also want to quickly talk about Constellations. C1 allows Kirara to create up to 4 additional bombs with her burst for every 8000 HP she has, so with a free-to-play health build, you can max this out and end up with 2 additional reactions she can cause, since those bombs have standard ICD. It's not super amazing, especially since without Kazuha, those bombs may or may not trigger when enemies are around, and you don't have much control over them anyway. Now, her C2, from what I understand, is purely designed for co-op. Bump into other players, and they get a shield as well. So if you don't play co-op, you won't care about this. C3 and C5 provide standard level increases for skill and burst. Both are nice to have, but not really critical. Now, C4 is actually pretty good. Shielded characters by Kirara who use normal charge or plunge attacks will trigger a coordinated attack from her, and she drops one of the bombs. Sadly, it triggers only every 3.8 seconds, so basically only 3 off-field attacks. Not that great for Nilobloom, pretty nice for Quicken to refresh it, and most importantly, it's still not reliable enough for Hyperbloom or Burgeon. If you're aiming to upgrade her, this would be the best stopping point. Finally, C6 is really simple. Everyone gains 12% damage increase to all elements after Kirara uses your skill or burst, which roughly translates to 5% damage increase for the whole team. I like the simplicity, pretty good constellation, but definitely don't go for it, it's not worth the primo gems. So what do I think about this cat courier? I think she actually comes packaged with a lot of good value. Her damage, while mediocre, can be improved with some DPS stats. Her shielding is pretty strong and can also be amazing against Dendro core explosions. Also, there's a lot of great swords you can go for, while Sapwood or Iron Sting are great free-to-play options. Favonius, Sacrificial, Jade Cutter, Key of Kajinizud, and even Festering Desire along with Freedom Sworn, all of these weapons in many different team variations work well. Best of all, she absolutely power crept Sayu when it comes to traveling. Compared to the Sleepy Ninja, you can jump and climb with Kirara Catbox mode, and as an example, you can see here how much faster it is when it comes to traversing the landscape. Going on top of buildings has never been easier than now. I also like the fact her shield is strong enough for general purpose, so even now Yoimiya is featured with Kirara, and she actually works great for Yoimiya as a shielder. Obviously not as good as Zhongli, but you'll enjoy having her. And same could be said for Yaimiko for Quicken teams. And overall, with so many new Dendro characters coming out in the recent updates, I think Kirara stands out pretty well, and I enjoyed using her. But because Fontaine is around the corner, and the fact 4 stars can be a huge gamble to wish for, I would hold off from pulling for her, unless you really want Yoimiya or Yaimiko. Otherwise, it's nice to know she exists now, and maybe you can get her from the standard banner or future featured banners. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I would be really grateful if you could press the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.